Well, next up, a gentleman that you'll probably all recognise, regular attendee and contributor to conference, which is great. I do hope that will continue, because he's had a promotion. He's moving on to a different responsibility. So I'd like to introduce you to Andrew Barnetson, or Andy, as he likes to be known. He's going to do a double-hander today. He's going to talk about the CPI Promotional Committee, which the Sheep Plant Association supports, and the programme for schools, but also give us an update on EPR and roles that might be changing slightly at CPI. So a big round of applause for Andy Barnetson, please.
Thank you, Tim. A pleasure to be back with you all. As Tim says, I've got 2 slots for you today. We're going to rattle through the promotional work, and then we're going to tackle the packaging regulations. On the one hand, the promotional work's a bit of fun. The packaging regs is not, but we have to go through it anyway. But before we start, I've got a short video clip for you, please.
This is a tale about a bee and his friend who teamed up to save the world. They didn't use capes or magic or wands. They just needed the help of a girl. The bee was named Buzz and his pal Montague, the longest dog you've ever seen. Were hatching a plan to tell all the humans the earth was in danger, you see. They needed to stop the plastic pollution, the crisp packets and straws in the sea. The girl came along, singing a song, and said, "I can help you, let me." Georgia was full of inventions. Cardboard was her favorite to use. It can be recycled again and again. Tell the world there's no time to lose. She sung from the treetop and Buzz buzzed along. Montague woofed to the tune. Her cardboard song inspired the planet. And we hope it inspires you too. Stop all the plastic pollution. Stop throwing it into the sea. Cardboard can be used again and again. Choose cardboard and set the world free.
Thank you. If I could have the rest of my slides, please. So what are we doing this year in the promotional campaign? We've just seen the first big win. I'm going to go back to it in more detail. But essentially, what we've done this year is recognise that some of the projects in previous years were good. Our sculptures, our Voxpop videos got us out to the hundreds of millions through the big national newspapers. But what we're doing now is being much more focused. Our previous chair, who's in the room today, said, let's do social media. Let's get involved with the kids. And we've got some really good results now. So that video clip is the winning entry in a competition that we ran earlier this year. One of the kids came up with the ideas, and the prize was, we'll animate it, we'll turn it into a video clip, and she's obviously delighted that she's got that. Mum and Dad are over the moon, and we've got permission to use it. So that designed very much in the style of modern cartoons, I have to say, very much in the style of the cartoons from when I was young, back in the 70s. Some of you may remember Mary Mungo and Midge and all that sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing that goes round and round. So I'll come back to how we're using that in a moment. So just a few words about the Beyond the Box, in case anyone's not aware. Back in 2017, 2018, when we had all the Blue Planet TV shows, the threat of plastics in the oceans, we said, right, what we need to do is get out there and give the consumers a positive message. Promotional work before then had been trying to speak to your customers, say cardboard's good, and you're doing that anyway. What we decided in 2018 was let's get out to the public, stuff that we haven't done before, because it's difficult for industry to speak to the public unless you've got a huge budget. So we went out, ambition to get a positive message out. And we had a number of years with a successful London agency, big London agency. They bought us, as I mentioned, sculptures and promotional videos, and I've come to you saying we're in the Sun newspaper, in the Daily Mail. We've got a reach of hundreds of millions. That's great. But how focused was it? We've adapted, we've moved on, and we're doing something new. So with the new agency in place since January this year, we're doing social media. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. It's content that we hope is interesting. It's creative, it's crafts, it's what engages families. It's social media influencers who've got maybe 20, 25,000 followers because they're known for doing stuff around the home. Let's get involved with them. Let's use them to pass on our messages. So craft is a hook. kids love playing with cardboard. We can all have kids or grandkids who've taken a cardboard box and turned it into a fort, or it's a cat palace, or it's something. That gets the imagination going. And then it's environmental messages. Did you know? Recycling this, recycling that. So my question to you today, are you following us? If you aren't, then please do. That's where you find us. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Follow us personally. Make sure all your colleagues and employees are following us, please. We need the following. Someone said to me recently that you forwarded me something from your Beyond the Box page, but you haven't got many followers, have you? It doesn't look very impressive. We need to start by getting all of you guys and all of your colleagues following us, and then once we've got hundreds and thousands of followers, then we start to build our reputation. So we start there. Please make sure you follow us. We'll get these details to you if you don't have them. If you can't follow right away, we'll get these details to you, so please do join us. So as I've said, it's a family-friendly theme. It's creativity, it's engaging the kids, it's making people smile because there's a picture of a cat sticking out of a box. It's anything that gets people's attention. And then it's, did you know recycling rate? Did you know recycled content? It's all our recycling messages behind the scenes. And you can see the figures there. We've tasked the new agency with improving our followers numbers, 480% increase over the year. A big London agency who were doing some good work but weren't really focused on social media. Now a smaller agency, more cost effective, taking us out to social media, tasked with getting us out in ways that really will make a difference. In addition to the social media, we're keeping up our focus on national media. Some of you may have seen in the Grocer magazine over the summer, there were a couple of features saying, well, paper uses so much water. Deforestation. So we went in, and this short piece says to the grocer, don't be stupid, it's none of the sort. We don't use lots of water. We might borrow it, but 86% of the water that we use goes back into the same watercourses, at least as clean as when it was taken out. Deforestation, what are you talking about? Everything we do, it's FSC, it's PEFC, it's all sustainable. People have said, what about this deforestation regulation that's coming in Europe? What's the paper industry going to do? And we're saying, well, it's not a problem. We don't do it. We don't have any issues. There's a lot of work still to be done, and this is part of my new role that Tim's already referred to. A lot of work to be done in promotion. We're working with groups like Two Sides, who are here today. We're going to do a lot more of this than we have in the past. It starts here. So, coming back to the video I showed you at the beginning, in addition to the always-on social media, we've got two big projects this year. Half one was Choose Cardboard. We engaged with a group called Creation Station. We wanted to get out to schools. We've done some of this before. How do you get out to schools? Do you try and reach the schools directly, saying we've got some people who could come in? Well, you can do that, but it's hard work. Creation Station brought us a great opportunity. We said to the PR agency, we want to get involved with kids. They said Creation Station already does it. Do you want to partner with them? Easy decision. Answer, yes. And Creation Station took us out. And this year we got out to 14,500 kids. Creation Station has a franchise operation. If you want to do something with some local kids, you go to them, they give you ideas, you bring the kids together. 14,500 kids played with cardboard earlier this year. They learnt about the recycling messages, and we said, well, do you want to give us some ideas for a little story, a little video? Give us your ideas. And the winning entry was a story about the dog and the kid and Buzz and all this sort of thing. And we said, well, we can make it into an animation, and that's what you've just seen. So that animation now is available. If you want to host it on your website, or if you want to take it into a local school, you can do. And this is the beginning of engaging with the school kids. But it goes on. Second half of this year, we've got all aboard cardboard. And this is where Steve, wherever Steve is, somewhere here, thank you. This is where Steve's stepping up for Sheepland Association. We're engaging with the primary schools. We've moved on from Creation Station, who hosts in a social way for kids to learn outside of school. Now we're getting into the schools. We're going to 15 schools, just starting small, but we're going to 15 schools and we're saying, right, here's animations. We'll use that video clip. We've got all sorts of other things. We're building the animation for Beanie the Box, who's going to tell the recycling story. Animation, fun, quiz, games. We've got 15 volunteers to go into 15 schools to say, did you know cardboard, recycling, environmentally friendly? Ask them about plastics. And we're going to give them the quizzes, and we're going to give them all these fun games, and then we're going to say, here's a bit of cardboard, why don't you write to your local council and tell them how important it is to recycle? So we're going to get kids writing on cardboard to local councillors saying, do more recycling. 15 schools this year. Recycle Week is middle of October. That's what we're timing it for. But next year we could do it again. It could be 150 schools. It's up to you. So we're going to come back to you. We're going to ask you again. And there could easily be more schools. We all know that the kids are the future of the planet, so they need to know about what's right and wrong in environmental and recycling. So that's what we're doing, getting into all these schools. The video clip you saw, other animations still to follow with Beanie the Box, and we'll keep you informed how it went. I think I've said all that. What I haven't said is the Guardian newspaper, we've secured some coverage, so to promote this ahead of Recycle Week, we've got an advert which I just signed off yesterday, will be in the Guardian magazine saying cardboard supports Recycle Week. So some very focused activity in our social media, some very focused activity in our projects this year, and I think some really good stuff. So I've said it before, thank you for your contributions. It is very welcome, and we are making a difference. And that's it for the promotional work. How are we doing for time? We're fine. Okay, good. So that was the fun bit. I hope you found it was the fun bit, because it doesn't get any better from here. So we've got a lot of good work on the promotional stuff. I've talked to you about that before. I will be back to tell you more about it. The promotional stuff all stays with me. But to the regulatory, which I'm rather pleased to be putting behind me. Extended producer responsibility. I've talked to you before about some of these regulations and what does it mean for your company. So hopefully in the next few minutes we can look again at what it means and what you as a company need to do. Sweeping changes. The biggest change to packaging regulations in a generation. I've been doing this long enough that I remember in the late 90s when the PRN system came in. I was involved as a fresh-faced graduate at the time, all very excited about being in packaging. I'm not quite so excited about it now, but at least I have a rough idea of what's going on. So it's extended producer responsibility and it's deposit return scheme and it's consistency of collections and it's eco-modulation, all these different things which you may or may not be keeping up with. Our job at CPI to keep up with it all, to understand what it means, huge number of meetings, huge number of webinars, huge number of pages of legislation read to try and distill out what actually matters, and hopefully we can give you exactly that. We'll start with the simple bit. Deposit return scheme, it does not directly affect you. Deposit return scheme is for plastics, it's for metals, and it may or may not be for glass. It's going to mean that we as consumers pay extra if it goes through, and I say if it goes through, we'll be paying 10 or 20 pence for each can of beans, each glass bottle, each plastic bottle of washing up liquid, and we will get that money back if we return it to a reverse vending machine. Government, in their wisdom, think it's going to increase recycling. I think it's going to be hugely controversial. When people see their grocery bill going up, maybe I get the money back, but I'm paying more today. When I have to go back to the recycling centre, the reverse vending machine, it's going to be a pain. Various reasons it may not go through. The Scottish system was supposed to have gone live this year in August. It was set back. It's now October 2025, partly as a result of the setback. The administrator, the DMO, the Deposit Management Organisation, has gone into administration. Scotland now no longer has an admin lead with which to get this going in October 25. So it's absolute chaos. I don't think it will happen. Prime Minister's statement last week when he reined in on the number of bins we're all supposed to be having at curbside, I think it will get set back. The implication for us really is if plastics, metals and glass come out of curbside, the amount of paper left as a residual in curbside could increase. We could find paper goes from 25 or whatever it is percent up to 60, 80%. That might mean that your customers take on a bigger bill through EPR, which we come to in a second. So CPI is looking into this. We need to find some better understanding of what that means. But deposit return scheme, it affects us as consumers. It won't affect you directly as business. Consistency of collection. This is about all councils doing the same thing. Ideally, all councils would be told collect your paper separately. That really matters to the recycling industry. Again, Prime Minister's statement last week. I'm going to scrap the idea that there should be 7 bins at curbside. Well, Prime Minister, there never was an idea, but it sounds good, doesn't it? He scrapped something that doesn't actually exist, or was never going to exist. But what he made clear was he was going to rein in the suggestion there should be separate collection. It means that we'll probably have more commingled collection. You'll probably continue throwing everything in the same bin. That's not good for recycling. It's what DEFRA is now calling simpler recycling. Simpler for the consumer, but not good for industry. Again, it's not really your concern, but just for information. So this is what does matter to you, extended producer responsibility. And in essence, this is government saying, you guys in private sector, the packaging supply chain will pay for curbside collection. So when any of us throw something in the bin right now, we pay for it via council tax. The local council pays for the bin to come round, collect the recycling, sell it on to whoever they can get best price for. That cost falls to private sector in future. Something of the order of £2 billion will fall to the packaging companies, typically your customers, but occasionally it will be you. I've said it before, pay attention please, if your customer is below 2 million turnover and handles less than 50 tonnes of packaging in total, not your corrugated, in total, then they are below what's called de minimis and they are not responsible for any bills. You are. So you're going to need to know if your customers are below that de minimis. How do you find out? All that DEFRA's got for you is, well, it's your job to find out. So asking your customers what's your turnover, asking your customers what's your total packaging spend, or amount of packaging handled, I know that's meeting a lot of resistance, but that's the sort of information you need to know. Best advice I've heard so far is, if you're in doubt, just slap a surcharge on the invoice because we think you might be liable and let them tell you that they're not. It's something you're going to have to sort out for yourself. But that's the implication. Primarily the big brands pick this up. In some occasions it will fall to you. This is all to be organised by something called Scheme Administrator. On the one hand, they will speak to thousands of producer companies. That's you or your customer. And on the other side, they'll speak to hundreds of local authorities. Scheme Administrator will be a central organisation that will handle £2 billion. They'll go out to local authorities and basically say, how much money do you want? And they'll come to producers and say, this is how much you owe. Huge job, which was due to be in the public sector. It was due to be run by the Environment Agency or by DEFRA, and I, for one, have no faith at all that those public organisations can run it effectively, because what we need, the packaging supply chain, what we need is local authorities being held to task. Your recycling rate's down here. Why should we pay the same money as recycling rate up here? What are you doing to bring your efficiency up? The sort of things you do all the time in business, efficiencies. How can we be better? Local authorities don't always think like that. We need a scheme administrator that's going to drive it. So we've said to government, you must get us involved. There's some movement there, it may happen. But until recently, public sector was never going to be effective. Your obligations right now, if you have one, you can check online. Very good advice on websites, government website. If you aren't sure whether you're liable, you can check online. But very likely you have a data collection obligation. You have to know how much packaging you're putting on the market since January. Legally, it's since March. We prefer you advise since January. Over this summer, you've got to register. Into the autumn, you've got to register on the government website. This report packaging data service online. If you have the data collection obligation, you have to register yourself. Government need a month to authorise your registration. Don't ask me why, but then that cuts you down. You've got less time with which to submit your data. So it's collect, know what you're doing, register on the website, and then submit. And when do you need to submit? Well, legally, you're required to submit your half 1 2023 data by the 1st of October and your half 2 23 data by April next year. Those legal targets still stand, but the Environment Agency, who will be enforcing this, have said yes, but as long as you do it by the end of May, we won't enforce legally. So some people are saying that's a simple extension, you've got until the end of May. DEFRA is still saying we'd really rather you did it to existing deadlines. So typical of government. Environment Agency, you've got till the end of May, we're not going to enforce. DEFRA, yeah, but please meet the deadlines anyway. You will make of those conflicting views what you like. It is essentially an extension, so you have more time without being illegally challenged. But don't forget, those targets, those deadlines do still stand in law. So that's a quick rattle through the legal position. Some good news in all of this. This much I said to you at last conference. If your packaging is secondary packaging, it's not household, and therefore it's exempt from EPR. So if you're making some sort of retail-ready packaging or anything that's going to remain in the business waste stream, picture on the left, for example, then that's not household, and you should immediately be exempt from EPR. Data collection obligation, yes. Payments, no. Doubtless it's never going to be that simple, but that's the idea. Secondary packaging, exempt. Shipment packaging, your home delivery, your e-commerce, your Amazon-style packaging, example on the right, that is still under EPR. That ends up in the household waste stream. It's EPR. You could pick up a financial obligation for that. So you'll need to know whether your packaging is secondary or shipment. But I'm assuming the vast majority of what you guys are making should be exempt. The second bit of good news is around the timescales. It's all been set back. You may have heard an announcement over the summer that it's being set back to October 2025. That's the payments. Data collection, as I've just outlined, stands, although we now have this question about whether it's May or whether it's October. Those data collection requirements essentially still stand, but any payments that may possibly be due set back from October 24 to October 25. That's the earliest it's going to happen. There is a huge amount of water to pass under the proverbial bridge. DEFRA is going to find they've got a lot of work still to do, so expect more delays, but at the earliest, invoices won't come to you until October 25. So hopefully that's some good news. In all of this, we're in a good place in corrugated. We should be exempt if we're secondary. We should be in a decent place because we're very recyclable. When eco-modulation comes along, it's probably not going to affect you. If something's very heavily printed with a metallic foil, if something's got particular levels of glue, if it's double-sided laminate, your McDonald's ice cream container, that sort of thing, they may incur a slightly higher fee, but for corrugated you should be as low as it's going to get. So in conclusion, data collection obligation on you now, very likely, May or October, you make sense of that as you can. We're in a reasonable position and you're going to hear more about it in future. And you're going to hear more about it from a new colleague. This is my and finally. As Tim alluded to, I'm changing roles at CPI. I'm not leaving the CPI, but I'm moving into a role called competitiveness, trade issues, apprenticeships, looking at the future of the industry. Where do we want to be 25 years from now in terms of long-term strategy, building on our health and safety, building on our statistics, all that sort of thing. All the nice-to-haves, which we've never really done as well as we'd like. So I've got a pretty broad and new remit. Promotional work stays with me, so I will be back to tell you a bit more about the promotional campaign. But I'd like to introduce my successor, Phil, if you'd stand, please. Phil Fenton joins us. Make the most of it, Phil. Phil joins us, and with immediate effect, he's now our Director of Packaging. So you'll hear more from Phil at future conferences about the whole regulations. Delighted that it's Phil's problem now and no longer mine. But the promotional work stays with me, so maybe we'll both be here. Next time it will be two of us rather than one. We shall see how it all goes. But Tim, that's it. Thank you. The floor is yours.